The movie starts by showing a part of Hong Kong called Spring Avenue, which is an old town area. In this area, there's a restaurant called Seven Restaurant that serves Chinese food. It's always full of customers because the food there is really tasty. The chef at this restaurant is a young guy named Sky Ko. Sky is famous in Spring Avenue for his amazing cooking skills, and his dishes are always delicious. Meanwhile, in another location, there's a special event happening, the baptism of a baby who is a descendant of the king. This is a very important event, and it's getting a lot of attention from important people in the kingdom. Many people are attending it. The royal family even invited a chef who has received Michelin stars for his cooking. This chef's name is Paul On, and he's from South Korea. He studied culinary arts in Paris. Paul and his assistant Mayo really impressed the royal family with how delicious their dishes were at the event. Because of this, Paul's boss offered him a better job. But Paul said no to the offer because he wanted to follow his dream of having his own restaurant. With the help of his co-workers, Paul eventually opened a restaurant in Hong Kong. Back in Spring Avenue, Sky found out from the locals that his neighborhood was going to be renovated. It would become more modern with new buildings, which could make the area more famous. Sky looked thoughtful as he remembered his childhood with his father, Mountain Ko. Unfortunately, those memories were not pleasant because his father often said hurtful things to him. His dad didn't think he was good at cooking, which made Sky feel embarrassed. Mountain then told Sky that he wouldn't consider him his child unless Sky proved he was a great cook. So, Mountain decided to focus on his cooking career and used the excuse that Sky couldn't even make a decent bowl of noodles. He then left Sky with his best friend, Seven, who was a trusted chef and owned Seven Restaurant. Sky spent 20 years learning to become a great chef under Seven's guidance, all to show his father that he could be a great chef too. Meanwhile, Paul, who was already in Hong Kong, decided to buy some grouper from the traditional market a few days later. Out of all the fish sellers, only one had the kind of grouper he wanted. However, the seller didn't want to sell the fish to Paul and preferred to sell it to Sky because Sky was known for making the best dishes with it in that area. But because Paul insisted, the seller ended up splitting the fish in half so that both talented cooks could have some. The story then changes to a new restaurant opening called Stellar right next to Seven Restaurant. Stellar is a fancy white restaurant started by Paul and his friends. There's a big difference between Seven and Stellar. Seven looks plain compared to the luxurious Stellar. On the first day it opened, the people from Spring Avenue protested in front of Stellar and challenged the head chef there to a cooking showdown with Sky, who's known as the best chef in the area. Paul and Sky finally meet again and compete to show their cooking skills. Paul demonstrates how to remove fish thorns one by one, while Sky showcases his fish slicing skills. A visitor who saw their duel signs them up for a national cooking competition. The results of this competition will be crucial for Seven Restaurant because it's at risk of being removed by the local government as part of the Spring Avenue renovation plan. During a TV interview, Paul mentioned that Chinese dishes are a bit boring and don't keep up with the modern times. He pointed out that it's different from the Western cuisine he's used to, where they can come up with new dishes and cooking techniques. When Sky heard this, he felt even more determined to beat Paul in a cooking competition. The winner of this competition would get the chance to challenge a famous master chef known as the God of Cookery, who also happened to be Sky's father, Mountain Ko. In an interview, Mountain Ko claimed that he didn't know the chef with the last name Ko from Seven Restaurant who was taking part in the competition. He explained that in China, many people have the same last name as him. The next day, Mayo visited Seven Restaurant and invited Sky and his partner, Uni, to Stellar's restaurant. There, they were served a variety of delicious dishes with a unique presentation. Sky, sensing Paul showing off his skills, barged into the restaurant kitchen and threw food in front of Paul. Paul challenged Sky to cook a piece of beef, and Sky agreed right away. Skillfully, Sky prepared the beef, making it look incredibly delicious and appetizing. Not wanting to fall behind, Paul used his modern cooking techniques to enhance the appearance and aroma of his dish, making it even more tempting. When Sky caught a whiff of the delicious smell from Paul's dish, he walked away. On the other hand, Paul was quite impressed with the taste of Sky's cooking. While thinking by himself in the restaurant, Sky received a call from Seven asking him to meet somewhere. Sky went to the address Seven gave him and was surprised to see his father there after such a long time. This time, Sky didn't want to accept Mountain Co. as his father because Mountain had abandoned him to pursue a career as a master chef. Mountain Co. argued that he didn't want Sky to feel burdened by his reputation and skill as a chef. Mountain then challenges Sky to prove his cooking skills in a competition. From that moment, Sky becomes determined to outshine his father. Soon, the day of the cooking competition arrives. Paul and Sky have already set up everything before the competition starts. The winner of this competition will go on to an international cooking contest and face skilled chefs from around the world. In the competition, Sky prepares a traditional salt-baked duck using the conventional method. Meanwhile, Paul opts for a more modern approach, making a dessert, a foie gras sorbet. When the cooking time ends, the judges start to evaluate the dishes. Although both chefs have the same score, the judges declare Paul as the winner because his dish presentation surpasses Sky's plain presentation. Disappointed by not winning the competition, Sky leaves the stage. The following day, Sky decided not to go to work at the restaurant. Seven knew where Sky spent his evenings and went to him to lift his spirits. Seven said that in a competition, it's normal to win or lose. He then shared a story from his travels when he encountered two young monks who offered him their lunch. Back then, he noticed some mistakes in the way the food was prepared. However, he was deeply moved by the words of the two young monks. They explained that they had grown the wheat themselves and turned it into ingredients to make a meal that they could all enjoy. They appreciated every dish they ate because they understood the hard work that went into making it. So Seven advised Sky that cooking requires both skill and heart, and it's important to appreciate every dish, no matter how it tastes. Meanwhile, at Stellar, Paul is chatting with his colleagues. They're celebrating their victory when the restaurant manager drops a bombshell. He wants to replace Paul with Mayo, saying that having a woman as head chef is better for the media. Paul is shocked and tries to defend his position, but Mayo reveals a surprising secret. It turns out that Paul has a problem with his sense of taste. He can't tell certain flavors apart, especially saltiness. In his daily cooking, Paul relies on a notebook with all his recipes and asks others to taste test for him. That's not all, though. Mayo also confesses that she had an affair with the manager and admits she never loved Paul. She only used him to further her own career as a chef. Paul is furious and hurt, so he leaves Stellar. Soon after, Sky crosses paths with Paul at an event stadium where they're both drinking. They start sharing their pasts and why they became chefs. They discover they share a mutual respect for each other and a common goal of reaching the top of the culinary world. So, Paul and Sky decide to team up. Sitting in front of the famous God of Cookery banner, Paul reveals that Mountain Co. has always been his cooking idol. In response, Sky admits that Mountain Co. is actually his father. At first, Paul thinks Sky might be bragging, but after hearing Sky's backstory, he believes him. Meanwhile, the owners of Stellar Restaurant try to persuade Seven to sell his restaurant to them, but Seven firmly refuses. Soon after, Sky arrives with Paul, and Paul reminds the Stellar Restaurant owners that he's qualified to compete in the culinary championship as the winner of the previous competition, not them. Paul also announces his partnership with Sky for the upcoming cooking competition. The Stellar Restaurant owners are surprised by this technicality, and they leave Seven Restaurant feeling betrayed by Paul. From that point on, Sky and Paul start training to improve their cooking skills for the international cooking competitions. As time passes, they become closer and more familiar with each other. Finally, the day of the international cooking competition arrived. Paul and Sky joined forces to showcase their cooking skills against 4 other talented chefs. They were up against chefs from France, India, Japan, and even Mayo, who was a formidable competitor. These expert chefs demonstrated their skills in preparing ingredients and creating delicious dishes. For their entry, Paul and Sky chose to make mapo tofu. Paul relied on Sky's sense of taste to help him judge the flavors of the ingredients accurately. Meanwhile, Sky utilized Paul's knowledge of molecular science and culinary artistry to give a modern twist to a traditional dish. To keep it short, Paul and Sky emerged as the winners of the cooking competition. After the competition ended, Paul acknowledged that in the showdown against Mountain Co., only one of them could challenge the god of cookery. Because Paul had lost his sense of taste, he decided to let Sky face his father. From the beginning, Paul understood that Sky had a strong desire to face his father in a cooking challenge. He wanted to give Sky the chance to make that happen. Paul was grateful for his own success, even though he couldn't taste food well due to his limitations. A few days later, Sky finally had the opportunity to compete against his father, Mountain Co., in a cooking competition that gained worldwide attention and had a large audience. As the competition started and Mountain began to cook, Sky became lost in thought, reminiscing about his childhood. Out of the blue, Mountain splashed water on Sky's face to snap him out of it. Sky then got back to cooking. For this competition, Sky decided to prepare a noodle dish, which was a simple choice for such a prestigious event. On the other hand, Mountain created luxurious, artistic, and of course, incredibly delicious dishes. Then, Sky served the same noodle dish to Mountain that Mountain had made for him years ago before leaving him. After tasting the food, Mountain called out to Sky and praised his cooking skills. Sky smiled at his father and walked off the stage, leaving Mountain to savor his noodles emotionally. The movie concludes by showing Sky, Paul, and everyone in the Spring Avenue area preparing to celebrate Chinese New Year at 7 Restaurant. So, the moral of the story is life's like a potluck dinner. Even if you can't tell salt from sugar, just sprinkle some chaos and serve up laughter. And if your noodles turn into spaghetti on a roller coaster ride, well, that's just one saucy adventure.